Hey guys, so the aim of this video is to share some tips that will actually help you become the equivalent of a one-man army in King of the Hill. I've noticed that a lot of these types of videos tend to have players giving out tips when they can't really back it up with their score or kill death ratio. It can be pretty frustrating realizing halfway through a video that you've just wasted 10 minutes of your time. So here's a short and shameless 10-second montage of some of my scorecards from the last few weeks so that you can judge for yourselves.
Nothing's gonna ever keep you down. You're the best around. And nothing's gonna ever keep you down. You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down.
Right, if you survive those 10 seconds, well done. And if Karate Kid hasn't pumped you up to become the best, then there's no hope. Anyway, let's move on to 10 tips that will give you the KDR equivalent of a one-man army. Tip number 1. Understanding the battle space. So when you spawn in, it's very important to take a moment to reference your map and obtain as much information as possible about the battlefield before you move to the AO. Figure out where your teammates are and where the fighting is taking place. Also take note of any markers or information that's been placed on the map previously by your teammates, such as a sniper or a group camping the main entrance your team's using to drive into the AO. Once you've got as much information as possible, you can plan accordingly to that information and plot a course of action. Don't forget to use your personal marker to mark things like dismount points. For those who don't know how to do that, it's just shift and left click. Additionally, you should be checking your map quite often so you can maintain your awareness of the friendly forces around you. You can see tags through buildings, but it can be a bit deceptive regarding distance. As you'll see in a few of these clips, I'm flicking onto my map quite regularly, especially if I hear friendlies in a firefight, as I'll use the map to ascertain what direction they're shooting in so I can try to locate enemies.
He's dead as well, got him.
Good kill. So there was a guy south, I don't know if that was a...
One of the easiest methods for increasing your kill count is by establishing areas of domination in high traffic areas. Naturally, the first step to this is identifying those high traffic areas on the map, which goes hand in hand with the last tip on understanding the battle space. Once you've identified where the fighting is taking place, you can begin planning where you want to situate yourself. It's ideal to find a good 2-story building on a street corner, giving you good coverage of multiple streets and any high traffic zones. If you can see a tower or two, it's also a bonus, as you'll always get told on side chat when there's enemy combatants in towers. It's important to note that I always set a 2-minute timer in my head from the moment I get my first kill in whatever building I'm in, if I think the enemy I killed has identified where I killed them from. Even then, if you're making some noise, it's good to ensure you don't stay still for too long. You don't need to leave the area, you simply need to move positions. A building across the street or down the road will suffice. You also need to be aware enough to know when the bulk of the fighting has moved on from your current area. Once that's happened, just start the procedure again. Identify the new high traffic zone and proceed as we've discussed. All towns will have high traffic areas that will change and evolve throughout the round. However, all towns also have at least one natural anchor point that players tend to gravitate toward. A good example of this is Tower 4 in KotH, as it's central and always has players in and around the immediate area trying to control it. KotH also has a second static zone, which is the hospital and the rocks behind the hospital, which at minimum always has players trying to snipe from the rocks or hospital roof. If you can understand where the static zones are in each town, you can already start forming a game plan before moving to the AO. Just ensure you remain adaptable to whatever situation presents itself. So the most common mistake that I see happening in every game is players standing too close to windows. Gun barrels poking out of a window, it's a very common giveaway. You can be down the road from a house and identify a contact in the building without actually having a visual inside the window itself. Anyone with a decent caliber weapon can simply spray the wall and get a kill without seeing the actual body of a person. Or they can simply storm the house with their buddy once they've identified what house the barrel is actually poking out of. If you're standing that close, you'll also be easily recognisable in a window, as the shape of a person stands out drastically, funnily enough. What I find that helps enormously is to stand a metre or so back from the window. If you need to change your angle or line of sight, just move very slowly left to right to get a visual on the areas you need. The main exception to this rule is when you get visual on a vehicle entering the AO or a large group of enemy in front of you, in which case placing your weapon on a window ledge is ideal for stability so you can easily mow down your targets. It's also ideal for when you spot a sniper or enemy at the edge of your weapon's effective range, whatever that might be, and you want to have a crack at them. So the ledge effectively cancels out that weapon sway while you take the shot. Just be quick, obviously. I always avoid going up towers, and I say that as an absolute. Some players seem to have this insistence that by controlling towers you control the AO, but this is absolutely not true. The tower really just acts as a death trap for whoever's inside it and makes it very hard for you to get kills. Obviously, you don't win the game by getting the most kills, you win by number superiority. And whilst part of that is keeping teammates alive in the AO, which towers do well, the other half of the game is about killing the opposition to maintain that numerical superiority. So when you're in towers, you can't do the latter effectively. You can obviously get kills from the tower, however, there's just a higher chance of someone in the AO spotting you before you line up a target once you've actually popped your big fat head into a window to look for targets. Also, running up the tower is a big risk in itself. If I decline to revive someone, it's usually because they're up in a tower. It's just too big of a risk getting up there and then back down again. I will say though that on the third person servers they're actually far more practical, as you can take advantage of that third person view.
Might need a tower to get that. Alright, no.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of players that will argue this, and that's fine, each to their own. However, in my experience, my death count greatly decreased once I started driving to the AO. People take the flying option as it's more convenient, however, the convenience comes at a cost of a higher risk of death. No matter how good the pilot is, the helo itself acts as a beacon for enemy attention whether you're landing or parachuting, and shooting parachutists is not a difficult feat. The only exception I make is when a fresh game begins and there's no one waiting in the AO to shoot me out of the sky, in which case the helo insert is generally fine. Apart from that exception, I find driving to be a more optimal insertion method, as you have more control over your entrance into the AO, and on some maps a sport hatchback can actually beat a hummingbird to the AO anyway. Additionally, I should point out the obvious that driving into the middle of the AO is a quick way to die. Mark a dismount point where you believe it to be safe on the map, and don't be afraid of dismounting slightly out of the AO and running in if it's safer.
I think it's like where they did the graph. It pushes the pressure on that point every time I try to extend my leg.
Reviving without the use of smoke is actually often a safer method for reviving. It probably sounds a bit crazy for those who have some KotH experience up their sleeves, however, whilst there are definite times when you need to use smoke, those times aren't as common as you'd think. I say this because smoke is a huge giveaway to any opposition in the area that didn't know you were there to begin with, as it's basically a great big puffy white sign telling the enemy where you are and what's going on. If you are going for a revive, try to see if it's possible to revive someone from the other side of a wall or from inside a house if their body is close enough. If the chances of you dying whilst reviving are too high, don't be afraid to ask people to respawn. Additionally, use smoke as a way to break contact. If you think the enemy is closing in on your position and you're on the back foot, pop smoke between you and the opposition or directly on your pathway of retreat, wait for it to bloom and then pull back.
Okay, this fucked up.
This is a topic that deserves a video to itself, as player profiling and the various types and subtypes is quite a complex subject. To keep it simple, we'll focus on one of the most important aspects, which is the strong group player subtype and how to track them. Strong group players are the biggest threat in King of the Hill, so you need to be identifying enemy who are running solo and who are running in a group from the moment you enter the AO. Once you understand that, you can use your kill feed to track them. Basically, if you kill a player that you know to be running in a tight group, it's a giveaway that their group members are most likely nearby, despite you not having seen them yet. If you see an enemy group player pop up on the kill feed as being killed by a teammate, reference your map for their position or ask on side chat as to where they killed them, or vice versa if your teammate was on the receiving end. To put it simply, once you've identified an enemy group and the personnel within it, you only need to know where one of them is to know where the rest of them are. As you've seen already, a lot of deaths occur when players are moving across open ground, so as such, it naturally makes sense to avoid crossing or fighting in open areas whenever possible. Whenever I'm moving from point A to point B, I'll plot a course that utilises buildings as much as possible, so I've got hard cover most of the way. I see a lot of players just running down roads, which they're doing for the convenience, however there's nothing convenient about being dead, so take that extra time to manoeuvre using hard cover or concealment at a bare minimum. Additionally, use Vault to your advantage by pressing V. If you're upstairs in a 2-story building and need to escape but have enemies downstairs or outside, move to the balcony opposite to where the enemy is and vault off it. You'll survive the fall and can then either retreat to fight another day or perform a counter ambush.
Pretty sure.
Like all games, there are weapons that people will call OP. I use the SPMG, which is fairly up there due to its punching power, however it does make you slower on your feet and limits your sprinting distance. When choosing a weapon you should experiment and remember that every weapon has its strengths and weaknesses, so try to find something that matches up with your playing style. Also, you're always going to get someone who complains about grenade launcher perk, sniper rifles, or the Navid LMG especially, so you need to ask yourself, how many fucks do you give? Hopefully the answer's 0, leaving you to choose whatever weapon makes you happy. There are various armors to suit various playing styles. I like the Spec Op armor due to its protection, and while it does limit your sprinting distance, I rarely find it an issue as I'm usually using houses as stepping stones for movement. If you're being killed because you're not fast enough in the open, then you're probably not making the right decisions in the first place. Naturally, this armor will save you on multiple occasions simply due to its higher armor rating and coverage, especially against lower caliber weapons. However, just like weapons, experiment and choose something that works for you. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. I hope you're able to take some of these tips and add them to your own game. I've really just scratched the surface on all of these topics to keep things short. However, just leave a comment below if there's anything you want me to talk about in more depth. Cheers.
Yeah, I'll rate that under the power line 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5?
Due to the fact that it was very skillful, but it's a health and safety violation.
Oh, Steve! Oh, we're alive! Oh, no!